Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode with me, Teacher Yuven. And today we're going to be talking about mothers, right? So, whether you're a working mom, whether you're a stay at home mom, this episode is especially for you. Now, before we start on today's episode, I want to have a sharing session. I want to share with you what I have heard sitting on this side of the screen from mothers, right? So, most of the mothers who come to us, here are some of the things that they have shared, right? They say that they're juggling work and family, and at the same time, they have to juggle their child's education, they have to juggle the child's health, they have to make sure the child becomes a success. Now, even though they are doing this much, they're doing a lot more than anybody else. They are constantly surrounded or engulfed by guilt. They always feel like they're not doing enough. They always feel like, oh, I was not there for that special moment. I was not there at every moment my child needed me. So this constant guilt engulfs them. So in today's episode, I guess what we're trying to do is we are trying to break away from the stereotype. We're trying to help mothers see that balancing it all doesn't mean perfecting it all, which means balance is not exactly perfection. It's easier said than done. So we're going to make sure that you leave today's episode with a lot of tools that you can implement and achieve this in your own life. Now, the other thing that I think I've heard a lot of mothers share with me is that they always tell me, teacher, I am tired of being the teacher at home. I just want to be the mother, which means what they're telling me is that I just want to play with my kid. I just want to ask them how their day is and then have dinner and then go to bed. Like what or when this happens is when schools are not doing a good job or the teachers are not teaching properly at school and the child is lagging. And then that burden falls on the mother. This is also a lot of mothers have shared with us, right? And then, of course, is the last part. I don't know, this one is because of the society around them or mothers themselves feel this, right? They always feel like, oh, you know what? My child is only going to be this young once. After this, they're not going to need me anymore. So I always share with mothers, right? But you are also only going to be this age once. You are also aging. You also need that time to enjoy your own life. Then it becomes a question of balance, right? So I guess in today's episode, what we're trying to do is how do we achieve this? How do we have it all? Now, in order for us to have it all, I think from listening to so many mothers, because I've been a teacher close to 15 years now, right? So what I know, one of the biggest domino effect, or I could say that one of the biggest blocker for mothers to be super productive or even content with their life is mom's guilt. So that is the first thing that we're going to explore today. We're going to explore why do you even have mom's guilt, what to do about it, how to handle it. And I feel like if a lot of mothers can get past the mom guilt, then they are able to see clearly on what needs to be done logically and rationally. But because of this guilt, it always pushes them to take an action that might not be the best in their child's need or even for their own mental health and well-being. So what we're going to do today is first we're going to cover and really unbuckle or unpack what is this mom's guilt. Then the next one we're going to do is we're going to look at emotional toolkit for busy mothers. Now, why is this emotional toolkit important? Because I feel like once you've unpacked the mom's guilt, it's very important for you to understand how do you manage yourself and your emotions. Because from what I've heard, at least, because I'm not a mother, but I'm a parent, so I hear both from personal stories as well as professionally what mothers share with me, right? There is a lot that women experience because of so many expectations on them, right? So how do you manage all these things? So when you get past these two stages and then doing the third thing becomes super easy, which is what are you supposed to do to ensure the academic success for your children despite you being busy. So that is the three parts that we're going to look at. That are the three parts that we're going to look at in today's episode. Now, without further ado, let's get started with the first one. So the first one is, why do you have mom's guilt, right? Okay, this is a super interesting concept. It took me a long time to research and present it in a way that will make sense to a lot of people. But let's start by the first one. The first reason why you have mom's guilt is driven by evolutionary biology. So it's just in the biology itself. So what do I mean by that? So if you want to understand evolutionary biology, let's just break it down to two. Yeah. So first are the attachment theory. The second one, kita kena look at the evolutionary advantage. Apa tu evolutionary advantage? So first, attachment theory. So the psychologist John Bowlby, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. So what he introduced is this attachment theory that there is a strong emotional and physical bond between the child and its primary caregiver. So in most situations, universally, the primary caregiver is usually the mother. In most situations, I would say 90+% situation, right? So the mother is the primary caregiver. Now, why does the child develop this attachment? Because this is where the evolutionary advantage comes into place. Because as much as the child is attached to its primary caregiver, in this case, the mother, it is then higher, the chances of it surviving becomes higher. So that means it's like a scientific experiment. That means the more you are attached to the primary caregiver, the higher the chances of you surviving as a baby. Now, what happens is then the attachment becomes really strong, and there are hormones released to make sure the bond between the mother and the child is really strong, really at its highest when the child is newly born. And I don't think that goes away after the child is a toddler, right? A lot of children remain attached to their mothers throughout their life. Now, when they stay this close to the mother, and that is our biology, that's our, by human nature, this is our biology, right? Now, what happens is with modern responsibilities, when women started to work, there is a distance. Even if you are working from home, you cannot be 24/7 available for your child, right? Especially those mothers who are going to office to work, there is a forced distance. Now, this forced distance is a problem because it creates conflict with your own biological urges. Your own biological urges is to be there 24/7, take care of your child, nurture them, be there for every slip that they have, every bruised knee that they're going to face. You want to be there all the time. This is your biological urge, right? But the modern requirement is that you leave and go to work. Okay, how do we solve this problem? So first step is actually recognizing that these forces are more powerful than you. It is more powerful than what you want in your mind. So in terms of biology is going to push you in one direction, right? It's a very powerful force. And you need to accept that sometimes it's not rational, because as a mother, if you are there 24/7 available for that child, when is that child going to learn independence? Correct? So sometimes it is not rational, but it is a very powerful urge. So it is hard for mothers, unless you recognize this, that this biological urge is there. If you're going to function without noticing or without acknowledging this biological urge is there, then it is going to make your life even more difficult. You're always going to feel like, oh, there's something wrong. But just recognizing the fact that this biological urge is there and the urge is to stay with my child will give you some sort of solace, some sort of at least room to wiggle around. Oh, okay, this is because of my biology. It's not because of anything else, right? So what do you do now? You already know that this is driven by biology. Does that mean that you just stop and stay at home? Does this mean that you should abandon everything and stay at home, or you should abandon your child and be a career woman, right? Is this the two options available to you? So of course not, right? So what you want to do is you want to have an open dialogue. And I think that's what today's episode is going to aim at, is to have that open dialogue based on your own values, your own family's values, and probably what is the shared value between you and your partner, and what is your family's current need, so we can decide based on that. Now, this is going to be super powerful to have this dialogue, because once you have that dialogue, right, it is all out there in the open. I noticed that mom's guilt is super strong. Mom guilt super strong when it is inside your head. When you are thinking all these things, your thoughts are ruminating, it is when it is strongest. But once you have this open dialogue, either with your children or your spouse, it becomes weaker. So now it is all out there, open for you to analyze and make a rational decision. So that's the first one, right? Why mothers have. So understanding this is super important, that it is driven by evolutionary biology. The next thing that most mothers, I think, fail to verbalize or fail to put it out there is that they are torn by the expectation placed on them, right? Okay, this is very, very amazing, yeah, because I'm a young parent as well. So when we go out, if there's something happening with my child, they don't look for me first. They always look for my wife. And I can see that there is so much expectation placed on women, and women fulfill all these expectations flawlessly, that at most places, it's as if the fathers are not needed or not even expected to take an action. So I'll share. So we were planning for my son's birthday. And when I texted the balloon supplier, the first reply was, yeah, mommy, which color do you want? So it means to most people, it is beyond their understanding or beyond their imagination that our father will actually message to figure out the decorations or the cakes and whatever not, right? So there is so much expectation placed on women, especially mothers. Now, we can break this expectation into two parts, okay, and why it creates the mom guilt. We need to understand this deeply if we are to break this guilty feeling away. Okay, two parts, yeah. The first part is role strain and role conflict, and the second part is cognitive dissonance. Okay, if any of these words seems very big, just hang in there. I'm going to break it down and explain it to you just like how I do it in a class. Okay, first one is role strain and role conflict, right? What does that mean? Okay, in the modern world, all of us are expected to do so many things, right? So in the case for me, especially, let's say I'm expected to be a father, to be a husband, to be a good boss, to be a good teacher, so many things. And that is because I, first of all, choose to be in these positions. But I think for women, they don't have that choice. The moment you are married and a mother, you are expected to suddenly be the best mother the world has seen, and the best wife the world has seen, and better yet, the best daughter-in-law the world has seen. Because I don't think such expectations are placed on men. I don't think anybody goes around expecting their son-in-law to be playing any role, you know. But all these roles are expected out of women. So there's a huge strain, right? So for mothers especially, it can be very detrimental because they are required to balance multiple roles that require a lot from them. So one is being the primary caregiver. Everything also harap mak kan. Buku mana, uniform mana, bila nak pergi tuition, bila nak pergi kelas tambahan, semua harap mak. Masak apa dekat rumah, beli groceries dah habis kena isi balik, Colgate dah habis kena isi balik. Semua on the mother. And then the same mother is expected to meet milestones at work, kena meet deadline, kena make sure submit research paper, semua on time. So it is extremely challenging. It's extremely challenging. And I think because we don't have a conversation on how challenging this is, mothers suffer in silence. Right? So what happens is, because of this role strain, women experience a lot of stress, right? They experience a lot of stress because sometimes there might be incompatibility. A very good example is when, let's say, your child is sick and you have a deadline at work. Conflict. This is real role conflict. So which one do you prioritize first? I mean, most mothers will say, I'll prioritize my child. But what if you are a corporate lady who is, that project is worth 50 mil and your child, touch wood, has COVID? Can you see the immense pressure someone can be in when they are there, right? So what happens is then the guilt becomes quadruple. It becomes like 100 times more because they feel like they are not adequately performing well at any one of these roles. Now, the next one, why this guilt becomes magnified, is called the concept of cognitive dissonance, right? Okay. So I don't know why is it because culturally we have expected so much out of women, or because women expect so much out of themselves? There is two conflicting beliefs that women have to hold in their head at all times. So first, they have this view of being the perfect mother, right? You're always available, you're always nurturing, always patient. Anak buat gila macam mana pun, oh, you are just patient, you're just you're like Mother Teresa. You never lose it. Perfect mom, right? You're always loving, always kind. And then on the other hand, women also expect to be the high-flying corporate woman. Okay, I'm ambitious, I'm going to achieve everything, I'm going to be at the top of my corporate ladder. Like, both I want to excel in. So when these two things are forced in your mind at the same time, it creates cognitive dissonance because these are two conflicting beliefs or two conflicting values. Kalau senang nak cakap lah, this is almost two different people living in the same mind. So it becomes very, very challenging. And most of the time, because women have this internalized standard of motherhood, what a mother is, right? Or who a mother is, like I said, super perfect. It becomes really difficult to meet not just the requirement of being a mother, but also the requirement of being successful at your career, because you need to be perfect here. And also you want to be good here. Just being good at one thing is really difficult, but you want to now be good at both. Okay, so having said this, how do you solve the problem? How do you get out of here? Because today kita tak nak just discuss, oh ini masalah dia, this is what we realize, apa sebagainya. Kita also nak tahu, kita pun nak tahu apa solution dia. So bila kita tengok dekat solution ni kan, this is something very common lah. I talk to my friends who are mothers all the time, and also we advise mothers who are here, right, when they share with us about their challenges when they are enrolling their children. So one of the things that I always tell them is, okay, what is a good mother? If you feel like you are not a good mother, then what is a good mother? Can you define that for me? Is a good mother somebody who just cooks 3 meals a day and changes their children's clothes and does laundry? Is that a good mother? Or is a good mother someone who does all that plus guides them in homework? Is a good mother that plus somebody who listens to their child all the time without ever getting angry or being the perfect therapist all the time? Okay, you need a definition. You need a definition, meaning you need what is A, B, C, D, E, F, G tau. Maksudnya dekat tempat kerja, we always know, right, which one menepati target, which one kena target, which one is below target, which one is exceeding target, which is super good performance. So if you don't have this definition in your head of what being a mother is, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard because you are going to constantly just feel like you're not good enough. Because you're going to constantly compare like, oh, mak dia tu boleh bangun pagi every day masak sarapan. I tak larat nak bangun. I'm such a bad mother. You're just going to have this continuous comparison game going on in your head, and you are not going to ever be happy. So I always suggest to my friends and also mothers here at Pass Excel that have that KPI. Just write it out. I know it seems, oh my God, apa ni? But you have to do it. That's the only way you're going to be like, okay, you know what? I did quite a lot today. As a mom, I've done my part. Yeah, so untuk tahu tu, you have to set those goals. And we're going to look at how to do that later on in this episode, right? Okay, so the next one is, I think, very important to accept that motherhood is not a soccer game. Okay, motherhood is not a soccer game. So what do I mean by that? Motherhood never ends. Like, being a parent, it never ends. It's not like a soccer game. It's kind of like, okay, start now, 90 minutes later, we're over. Maybe buat penalty kick, dah habis. Football, over. Tak. You are going to continuously be the mother from the day you gave birth till the day that either one of you dies. Yeah. Let that sink in. It's forever. It's forever. And highly likely, if you cannot accept that, just look at your own mother. Highly likely, your own mother is still worrying about you and your well-being, even though you are an adult, you have become a mother and you have children of your own. Right? So this is a permanent thing. This is not a short-term game. I think there's this book that can really help you change your mind regarding the perspective or the long-term vision of being what it is like being a mother. And if you want to know the book, just comment down that book and we will make sure that we DM the book title to you. Yeah, so just not take more time here. So that's one of the reasons. So we've covered both evolutionary biology and we've seen torn by expectations. So the next thing that we're going to see is that we're going to look at societal and cultural norms. Like I said, right? when the child falls down, when we go out, either a wedding or a birthday, the moment the child falls down or they need somebody to look for, they always look for the mom. And I always feel like, I'm the dad, I'm just here. Like, by the time I go there, oh, then they're like, oh yeah, you're here also. It's almost like they cannot see you, right? So there's deeply ingrained expectation out of women that women will always be there, the mother will always be there, always be available. And I think one of the most damaging stereotype that we have for mothers is this ever-present mother, ever nurturing, and she is so very patient at every single step of the way, you know? So when women are expected to do that, and like I said just now, also be the ambitious career-driven women, then they feel like a failure, because it feels like you are not able to meet the idealized version or the idealized standard for even one role. And then you feel like a complete failure, which is why I keep telling people, have your own standards, have your own KPI of what meeting standard means. Kan? I mean, we will never go to work that, oh, hujung tahun lah kita tengok macam mana, whether you meet target ke tak, target pun tak tahu apa, lepas tu kerja je setahun. Boleh ke macam tu? Tak boleh kan? Like, then how would you know you deserve bonus ke tak? So similar thing applies even to being a mom, right? Right. So here's another thing that I really, really want to say, right? Okay. I absolutely hate this term. I absolutely hate mothers knows best. Because honestly, mothers don't. Maybe God knows best. But how is a mother expected to know the best all the freaking time? A good comparison, yeah, to see why mothers don't know best. When my wife newly gave birth, she's suddenly expected to know how to change diapers, how to breastfeed, even though you don't have milk supply, even though you just gone through cesarean and you cannot even move. You are expected to suddenly be this patient, nurturing mother who's just so loving towards the child. And I'm like, wow, if I am at this position, if somebody just cut me open, I just want to rest. Like, I just want to sleep. Right? So, and I think at every single stage, the child goes through different development stages, you know, being the mother for the same child when the child is a teen, when the child was a toddler, when the child was a baby, when the child is married eventually, is completely different experiences because the person evolves, the child changes, the child has so many different needs, they have dislikes, they have new preferences. So the mother has to constantly also learn. All right. When we say that mothers know best, it is very damaging for mothers because they are suddenly expected to know the best, even though nobody told them what is the best, even though nobody told them what it means to do A, B, C, D, E. There was no definition given, tak ada scope kerja, tak ada job description, tak ada off time, tak ada holiday, tak ada annual leave, nothing. Like suddenly you're just expected to be perfect. That doesn't make sense. And then, I nak tanya lah, bila kita kata mothers knows best, right? Did any of you go to a school to get a degree to become a mother? Tak kan? Tiba-tiba jadi mak. And then tiba-tiba orang semua cakap, oh, mothers know best. No, mothers don't. Mothers need to learn as well. So this idea of a perfect mother is super damaging and it is very pervasive. In almost every media marketing campaign, literature, we always suggest that mothers know the answer. Mothers know which soap to choose, which detergent to choose. No, they don't. Okay, they are just normal human beings. So the more we just accept that we are normal human beings with flaws, we are not God, the better it is for our mental health. Right? So I hope that really did sink in because I see so many mothers struggling with this. The next thing is, right, comparative culture and social media. Okay, oh my God. Let's take a second here. I think social media likes to sell this idea that not just the mothers have it all, but they have it all at such ease, right? Dia ada anak 4 orang, company 2, you know, social media always on point. Tu pun tak apa, guys. Tapi still, tudung, makeup, baju, semua on point. And they like to make it seem like they did it all by themselves. And I think that is really damaging. I don't know why women do this to themselves or why women do this to other women, because I don't think there are guys who do this to other guys, right? It seems to be like women have this internal tendency to just show people that, I can do it, it's all good. Tak masuk akal lah, sebab orang yang buat ni dekat social media, dia ada orang gaji 2 orang, ada mak mentua, ada mak yang semua boleh tolong dia. Lepas tu dia datang on social media, dia pretend like, I kena buat laundry, anak I tak nak I tolong buat laundry. Tolonglah, please lah. You memang tak tahu mana mungkin mesin basuh dekat rumah you pun tak. Sebab you got so many people helping you. And that creates such a damaging impact on most women, because then most women start thinking like, is something wrong with me? Because I am, after all, just going to a job and have 2 kids and I cannot get it right. And this woman who has 4 kids, 2 companies, and everything is running perfectly. So that must mean that I am not efficient. That must mean I am not productive. So this comparative culture is super, super bad, right? And the other thing that I want to invite mothers to do, right? Cuba buat ni. Cuba pergi social media sendiri. Cuba pergi your own story highlights and look at those highlights yang you dah pin up tu. And then cuba tengok cermin muka sendiri. Is how your highlights are and what you see in the mirror the same thing? This is crucial to accept that we project only the highlight reel. We only showcase the best, right? So what happens is, even when we are comparing to our own highlight reel, our life might feel like not so good, not so great. Sebab highlight reel tu, asyik dekat cafe, dekat London, dekat Pangkor. Lepas tu kat rumah, kena buat laundry lagi, guys. Kena lagi sapu rumah. So, it doesn't jive, you see. Now, I think instead of us trying to put a flawless facade on how perfect being a mom is, or how you are so good at being a mother, I think a more mentally healthy thing to do would be to just follow influencers and celebrities who are more relatable, who just share what it is like being a mother, what it is like balancing business and the demands of motherhood. So I think this makes more sense, and it is far more better for your mental health to have something that is real to compare yourself against versus an idealized version. Of course, the best thing is just don't compare, right? Just don't have this comparative culture at all. Just see what you can do. And we're going to look into that in the next section of the podcast. Right. The next one that we want to look at, and this is super important, it is psychological factor. Okay, apa maksud psychological factor ni? So, okay, in my circle, a lot of the women that I know, they were high achievers dekat sekolah. Memang jenis, lepas dapat kertas periksa tu, you dapat berapa You 98, I 99. Ni macam tu, tahu. And then selalu kira, you dapat nombor 1, I dapat nombor 2. Jenis like that, super high achievers, straight A's, and they always did the right thing in life. Dia tak adalah lumba haram ke, pergi isap dadah ke, tak ada. Dia memang straight lane to success. Jadi doktor, engineer, accountant, macam tu kan. So, it is their own psychological trait and upbringing juga lah. They want to be the best. And I think the biggest roadblock or the biggest speed bump happens when they have a child, because the child doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't come with like, okay, press this button and then it all will be good. Just like macam bila kita belajar kat sekolah, there's a manual, right? Okay, you do this much of homework, you attend maybe this seminar, and then go to tuition with this teacher, you surely will get A. Okay, in your career, there's also a manual. Okay, make sure you follow what your job is about, maybe upgrade yourself with a certain skill set, jump jobs. There's a clear manual. But when it comes to parenting, every child is different. And you've got to learn the child and you've got to learn parenting at the same time. So when this mismatch happens, where they suddenly perceive like, why am I not as good as I was before? I used to ace every single thing. Why can't I ace this? That's when the guilt becomes magnified. Now, that's one. That's psychological factor part A. Here's psychological factor part B. Part B is women who grew up with extremely high parental expectation, or they experience conditional love. Okay, apa maksud conditional love or high parental expectation, right? Okay, this generally can happen from mothers as well, but most of the time what I've noticed talking to adults and also talking to my students is that this usually comes from the fathers. Meaning, okay, let me try to recap your memory lah. When you were a kid, bila ada saudara datang je, you kena perform. Nyanyilah dek, nyanyilah. Uncle ada kat sini kan. Oh, you know that song that you like to recite, why don't you sing that song? So you become the performer from the family, you know. And then you notice that every time you sing well or dance well or recite the poetry well, everyone validates you. Everyone validates of how good you are, and you can see that it makes your parents beam with joy. They're so happy that you're getting that recognition. So slowly, what happens is you understand that in order to receive validation, in order to receive recognition and appreciation, you need to perform. And then you make this equation in your head that for me to be loved, I need to be a good performer. I need to do well in order to be loved. And this usually gets magnified when you have a parent who, if you don't perform, meaning like suddenly you straight A student kan, tiba-tiba satu exam tu you fail, ataupun tiba-tiba satu exam tu you just B minus, ataupun tiba-tiba satu exam tu you dapat nombor 2. Dia terus macam, oh kenapa you macam tak boleh macam ni anak jiran ke, anak sepupu tu ke, dia boleh buat elok je, kenapa you tak boleh padahal I give you more than what their parents are giving you. So this is what we call conditional love, which means I love you as long as you fit into my definition of what a good child is. The moment you don't fit into my definition of what a good child is, I stop loving you. So this is exactly what conditional love and conditional love functions as, you know. So this means you are now motivated, or you are now geared to always getting things right all the time. So these deep-seated patterns of seeking approval and validation from the outside world can manifest super strongly in motherhood. Lebih-lebih lagi sekarang ada Instagram mummies, right? So anak selalu kena perfect, right? Because now the child also becomes a trophy. The child also becomes a showcase. So these are two parts of the psychological factor which really amplifies the mom guilt. Now, the next one, let's look at the next one. We have fear of judgment. Okay, fear of judgment ni betul lah guys, are very, very real, because I have sat on this side of the screen and seen mothers battle with themselves. Like, that means I am quiet. It's just the mother, macam ada dua person tau. Dia cakap belah ni, yeah, I agree with you. Then the other person comes out, and from the mother itself, the other person comes out and goes like, but I'm not sure, you know, what will my mother-in-law say? What would my mother say? What would my relatives say? The fear of judgment is so high. Now, is this fear of judgment wrong? Is this fear of judgment not real? Atau ala, I tak macam tu, maybe you say, right? No, guys. The fear of judgment is real because you need to understand how the human brain is programmed, right? The human brain is 50,000 years old, okay? It's not new. It's not your iPhone 15, right? So with a 50,000-year-old brain, if you did not fit into the tribe, if you did not fit into your team or your society, that means you're going to die. Because then the society is going to ostracize you. They're going to leave you out with no food, no water, nobody wants to talk to you, and you're dead. And that's how your brain functions. So fear of judgment is super real. And in psychology, they call it the spotlight effect, where you think that everybody else is thinking about you. But the truth is, everybody is thinking about themselves. So there's a really interesting article for the mothers who want to read this. It's by Tim Urban. You can check out Social Mammoth, where he talks about how slow our brain is to adapt to today's modern day expectations. And sebab tu, because of that, we end up making really wrong decisions because we think that everybody's going to judge us based on, oh, whether we want to go for C-sec ke vaginal birth, whether we want to breastfeed or bottle feed, or whether we want to put our children in online school or we want to put them in a physical school. Because we fear others' judgment, the mothers can't do what is best for them and what is best for their children. And when they don't make that right move, their guilt again get magnified because they're like, oh, why am I doing this? Even though they tahu I'm not doing the right thing for my child, but they are forced to do it because of fear of judgment. And when they do that, their guilt again gets magnified, right? Okay, now next one, I think this is very real, and I hope most mothers who are listening to this, really pay attention to the next point. The next point is about self-identity and self-worth, yeah? Okay, a lot of mothers by choice, choose to define them as mothers. If I ask you, who are you? Oh, I'm the mother of sekian. And that's not surprising because maybe it's in women's nature to put the role of mother the highest, right? But it is of a huge detriment to your own self-identity, because now your identity is tied to saya emak sekian. Tapi siapa you? Kalau budak ni tak ada dah. I mean, because budak ni hari ni anak you, esok akan jadi suami orang lain atau akan jadi isteri orang lain. So what happens to you then? Right? Now, I remember the very first time that me and my wife, we sent our son to daycare. Then we usually go together to pick up, right? So when we go to pick up, I was parking, so my wife was walking in front of me. I parked and then I was walking behind, so a bit of a distance. So they didn't see me, they saw my wife first. So when they saw my wife first, I came here, the receptionist at the daycare center, terus go like, oh, teacher, Raghav's mommy is here. And that was surprising because throughout our interaction with the daycare center, my wife was always known as Raghav's mommy. Never once did they address that person. Never once did they address my wife with her name, And I completely understand. Of course, teachers who are listening to this, I'm a teacher myself. I understand why, because it's just easier, okay? So if I have to remember 2 names for every one child compared to I just remember the child's name and add Raghav's mommy, it becomes a lot easier. I understand. But it has serious repercussions on the person on the receiving end, because society makes you identify yourself as only a mother. Suddenly that identity becomes all-encompassing, as if all the other identity is not important, because my wife is also my wife. She is also somebody else's daughter. She is also herself, right? All this identity is equally important, I believe, to her, because one day the identity that you assumed in relation to others is going to end, right? Your children will leave the nest. So what happens to your identity then when all your identity is just invested in being somebody's mother? So I think for this is why I say this is super important, because I think it is very important for mothers to take at least some time each day to do what you like, to continuously nurture that self-identity that you are another individual, or you do have a separate identity besides being a mother. Now, I find that this is a lot more difficult for women than men. Okay, I give you a simple example. If I am sick, I am out, guys. If I have fever, I am bedridden, okay? There's once I had really high fever, and I was asking my wife, oh my God, we have not written our will yet. I know, my wife keeps telling me I'm very dramatic. So I'm like, we have not written our will yet. What's going to happen? She's like, you're just having fever. Calm down. And then compare against my wife having labor pain. She's like, you labor pain sampai tengah pegang dinding ni tak boleh gerak. She's like, do you want to go have lunch first? You've been here for a very long time. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And on a normal day, if she's sick, she still wants to let me just order groceries online because it doesn't take time. I just, I can do it on my phone. I'm like, why do you do this? Maybe you should take cue from men, just rest. Just, like how, kalau ada apa-apa pun, the fathers still watch bola. EPL still penting. So I noticed that men don't have this problem. Now, I think what you need to do in order for you to be able to do this for yourself is to have, again, that open dialogue with your partner. If your partner is not like me, not looking at you weird when you are working, when you're sick, or when you are overextending yourself, because honestly, to me, it's really weird, because I will not do this. Why are you doing this? right? So if your partner doesn't think of this naturally, it doesn't matter. It's not a problem because some people need a lot more awareness. So you can have that conversation. You know what? I think every Saturday night, I want you to babysit so that I can have some time for myself. Kita alternate lah, right? So that conversation is very important so that you can take care of yourself. Now, remember benda ni rasa mungkin macam kelakar tau. Alah, dia ni suruh kita rest lah, suruh kita pergi buat nails lah, buat rambut lah, whatever. But you need that time. You need that break because the rest and rejuvenation is part of the program. It's part of growth. You cannot just constantly work yourself to the ground. And you are expected to be in the position of a caregiver. You are supposed to care for others. And in order for you to care for others, you first have to care for yourself. Right? I hope I made sense. And I've really unpacked every angle of mom guilt that can be there. And I hope you take a moment to reflect this. And I will see you again after a very, very short break.
Now I am definitely more confident when I'm speaking, and I definitely like taking on new challenges. And the teachers treat me really well here. They understand me, and like I said, I can form strong bonds with them, which makes classes much more fun. Now I understand much more in the real world, in the economic world, in the business world, where sometimes people speak about things, and before I would agree with them, but now it's much more easier for me to debate with them and disagree on many things. I will forever be grateful because now they have made me more confident to speak up. I am not shy anymore. Before I didn't really like to mix around with a lot of people, but now I definitely do. And I would also like to thank them for helping me, be eager to learn many new things.